All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're breaking down a really powerful framework called the sovereign trader. And look, this isn't about chasing the next hot tip or some magic indicator. It's about building a real, disciplined process, a system that gets you out of the chaos so many traders live in and into a place of logic. So, to kick things off, we have to ask a pretty fundamental question. And that question is this, and I want you to be really honest with yourself. Are you trading or are you just gambling? I mean, really think about it. It can be a tough pill to swallow, but facing that question head on is the very first step to changing your results. The whole philosophy we're digging into today puts it, well, pretty bluntly. It says, this is not trading. This is gambling with a chart open. And you know what they're talking about, right? It's that compulsive, almost addictive need to nail the exact top or catch the absolute bottom. That endless, stressful hunt for the perfect turning point. That's the habit we're here to break. So that brings us to the absolute core failure of most retail trading, what we can call the prediction trap. The entire system we're about to unpack is designed specifically to solve this one massive problem. It's all about replacing that stressful guessing game with a calm, methodical process of verification. And here it is. This is the big idea, the fundamental shift in thinking. The sovereign thesis is just this. You react to confirmed market structure. You don't predict outcomes. That's it. It's about reacting to what the market is doing, not what you hope it's going to do. We're getting out of the business of guessing and into the business of confirming. Okay, so how do we actually make that shift? It's easy to say but hard to do. Well, it all starts with completely changing how we think about the market itself. We're going to look at two really powerful, kind of radical ideas that will totally redefine how you see cost and loss. First up is this concept called the confirmation tax. And honestly, this is a brilliant reframe. You know that feeling of panic, like, oh no, I missed the bottom? This idea flips that on its head. Instead, you deliberately, strategically pay a small premium to get into a move after it's already proven itself. So you're not buying late, you're buying certainty. You're paying a small tax for a much higher probability of being right. And this slide just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, you have the typical retail mindset, driven by fear of missing out, by scarcity. Arg, I missed the move, I'm buying late. But the sovereign mindset is totally different. It's strategic. It says, I am paying a premium for a high probability verified trend. See the difference? It's moving from an emotional reaction to a logical, calculated decision. All right, the second big philosophical pillar is just as important. You have to reframe your losses. Stop seeing them as these massive personal failures. In any professional system, losses are just the cost of doing business. They are budgeted operating expenses. Think about it. A coffee shop has to pay for beans and rent, right? Well, a trader has to pay for small, controlled losses to stay in the game. When you think of it that way, it totally removes that emotional sting that leads to revenge trading, which, as we all know, is a complete account killer. Okay, so the mindset is in place, we get it, but how do we actually do it? Let's get practical. To verify what the market is actually telling us, we use a three-part toolkit. It's called the Triad of Detection, and this is how we read the raw truth of the market without relying on a bunch of confusing, lagging indicators. Now, this triad has a very strict order, a hierarchy. You can't skip steps. First, you look at structure. Think of this as your map. Then you analyze the volume. That's the effort behind the move. And only then, finally, do you confirm with price action, which is the result. It has to be in that order: map, effort, result. So let's start with structure, because structure is literally everything. In an uptrend, it's that simple sequence of higher highs and higher lows. And here's the rule. If that sequence breaks, your whole thesis for the trend is invalid. Period. It doesn't matter what a volume spike says or what a candle looks like. If the structure is broken, the analysis stops right there. It is the non-negotiable foundation of any trade. Okay, once the structure checks out, we look at the effort. And volume is what tells us how much real conviction, how much oomph is behind a price move. We use this effort result diagnostic to read it. So are we seeing high effort? And by that we mean volume that's like twice the 20-day average. That leads to a high result, a big price move. Great, that's confirmation. But what if you see huge effort, tons of volume, but the price barely moves? It's just churning. That is a massive warning sign. It's called absorption, and it suggests that a wall of sellers is just soaking up all that buying pressure. That's something you need to pay very close attention to. And finally, after structure and volume, price action is the ultimate verdict. It's the final stamp of approval. And the absolute cleanest signal of intent is what this framework calls a Marubozu ignition candle.
You know the one, a big, long-bodied candle with almost no wicks on either end. What does that tell you? It screams that one side, either the buyers or the sellers, was in complete and total control from the open to the close. It's pure, undeniable, dominant intent.
All right, so we've used the triad to analyze the market. We have a read. Now what? How do we actually turn that analysis into a trade, a decision? For that, we use the four-filter decision engine. And I love this part because it acts as a totally emotionless gatekeeper for every single trade you consider. The answer is always simple and binary. It's either a go or it's a veto. There is no maybe.
So this engine has 4 gates, and you have to pass through them in order. First, the catalyst filter. Here's the rule. We trade the market's reaction to the news, not the news itself. Big difference. Second, sentiment. Is everyone on social media screaming about this thing? Is it pure euphoria? If so, it's a veto. We avoid the hype. Third, validation. To get in, we absolutely must see a clear volume spike and a confirmed close above the key level. No exceptions. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important gate of all, risk to reward. And this is the final boss. The last, non-negotiable gatekeeper is your risk to reward ratio. The potential profit of any trade you take must be at least twice the potential loss, a 2-to-1 ratio, minimum. So even if you have a perfect-looking setup that passes all the other filters, if it doesn't offer at least 2-to-1, the trade is vetoed. End of story. This rule, more than any other, is what keeps a system profitable over the long run.
So when you start putting all these pieces together, you've got the philosophy, you've got the triad for analysis, and you've got the decision engine for execution. What happens is you create this profound shift in your behavior. You literally stop being a gambler who's just chasing random outcomes, and you become a professional operator who calmly executes a process. And all of this really comes together in what we can call the patience doctrine. These are mantras you should have taped to your monitor. First, waiting is not doing nothing. Waiting is a deliberate strategic position. Second, being in cash is also a position. It's a position with 0 risk and 100% optionality. And please, burn this into your brain. Missing a great move is free. It costs you nothing. But forcing a bad trade, that has a very real, very painful, measurable cost to your account. And this leads to such a crucial way of thinking. A trade that you execute perfectly according to your system that ends up being a loss is still a good trade. Why? How can that be? Because you executed your process flawlessly. And the process is the only thing you can actually control. Sticking to that process is what builds consistency and profitability over time, not the outcome of any single trade. And to wrap it all up, we'll end with this final, really provocative thought that just flips everything we think we know on its head. A trade that you entered on a whim, on pure impulse that happens to make you money, is a bad trade. Why? Because it just reinforces bad habits, the kind of habits that will eventually, inevitably, blow up your account. A sovereign trader knows that the quality of the decision, not the random luck of the outcome, is the only thing that truly matters in the end.